Bruchim habayim. Blessed are those who come to fellowship. In the name of Hashem. Thank you for being with us. This is Pesach Sherbo coming to you spot, and we're live. And Terry's with us. Terry Hayes, our co-host. Good to see you from Tennessee. And we have Australia with us. Hi, Christine. Is it Christine or Christina? You're on mute.
Unmute. It's actually Christina, but everyone calls me Chrissy.
Okay, Chrissy.
Mm-hmm.
And Angelica and Veronica, and thank you for being with us. Today in Israel, it is the 19th day of the month of September, right? Elul. And it is 3:06 in the morning here where I am, and you look at your clocks to see where you are, wherever you are. And hello, Troy, good to see you. So, a couple of things I want to preface it with. For women, if you will find the Facebook page that says Torah for the Nations Women's Gathering and join it. Shira, with the help of Angelica, they'll be doing weekly meetings there. Shira's trying to figure out a time where she doesn't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do it. Kind of throws her whole schedule off. And there'll be some interesting posts there and some teachings there. And of course, it's for the women to share. And I know Terry's wife's there, and Angelica and Chrissy have signed up. And there's amazing, I think there's like almost 50 people have signed up since we first opened it up 3 or 4 days ago, maybe 3 days ago. And things are going to really start rolling. One of the problems with right now is the high holidays and the nights they came out and everything else. So the meetings might not make it right away every week or whatever, but they're going to happen. They're going to be done on Facebook Messenger for the time being. Through the group. In other words, you'll see that there's a live broadcast going on in the group, and you can join it. Up to 50 people can join it at one time. So I think it's going to be very insightful and good for the women, and us guys are going to stay away from it. And I'll be giving, of course, Shira some help if she runs into questions she can't handle. But I'm not coming to the meetings. That's all for women. Guys, no guys invited. It's funny, we've had a few guys try to join the group. Don't quite understand why, but anyway, that's all up and running. And it is like all our other groups, like this group here. This is B'nai Noah Connection with Israel. It's Torah for the Nations. And it's going to help people understand what your responsibilities are, where you got to go, what you can do, essentially how to make yourself that person that God wants you to be. You know, I want to start the meeting a little different this time. You know, we all have, or most religions, let's put it this way, go to God or whatever, whoever they pray to. I need money, I need this, I need that, poor me, woe is me, I need salvation, I need whatever. And it's constantly asking. But I heard somebody say the other day, gave a little talk on it, a very well-known rabbi. He says, what is it that we need? He says, we didn't even have a need to be born. We weren't asked. Why were we born? Why do we have all these things? God has a need. I didn't need to be born. In other words, my soul was sitting with him, and I can't remember that, but this is what all our teachings show. And then he said, okay, and he tapped me on the shoulder and says, okay, you're going down there now. You got to turn it. What do I got to go down there for and go through all that stuff? Hungry and grief and people giving me a hard time and got to go to work and then I'm going to need a mortgage, and I'm going to need a car payment, and I'm going to need this and that. What do I need all this stuff for? And it's true. The rabbi that did it said, by the way, the rabbi is Rabbi Manis Freeman. He said, sometimes kids will come to you and say to the parents, I didn't ask to be born. And right away, the parents think, well, there's something wrong with the kid. But it's not true that there's something wrong with the kid. It's a very logical question for a young mind to ask. I didn't ask to be born. Why am I here? None of us asked to be born. And he says, when a kid asks you that question, says, I didn't ask to be born. Why do I have to do all this stuff? The answer is, I didn't ask to be born either. But here we are. Why? Because God needed us to complete his whole picture of what he wanted to do. Go ahead, Terry.
Could it be that God wanted us? Is he ever in any need? But maybe he wanted us.
Well, no, in this particular case, there's a need.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah. He is king of the earth. To have a king, you got to have subjects. So there's a need for subjects for somebody to be a king. So that's one of the needs. And to complete the creation, to complete everything he wants, the building of everything he wants, he could have just built everything all real nice and great. We would get born and we'd be a subject. We'd go through life with no hardship, no problem, everything, and no choice. What is someone that does something with no choice? What is that existence? That existence is a robot. It's a puppet. Now, it's really nice to make a bunch of puppets that'll come and worship you every Shabbat and tell you how great you are and all that kind of stuff. But what good is that? What does it give the king? Nothing. It has to be a choice by the creation what to do. And a lot of things can't be carried out, including the completion of Torah, can't be carried out unless we do our part. So he created us, he created our needs, he also fulfills our needs, not all our wants, but our needs he creates. And we have a choice to fulfill God's need for us as an individual or not. I prefer to fulfill his need for me. I was created for some reason. He didn't say, here's your assignment, hand me a piece of paper and send me down to earth. It's part of the things we have to go through. Some people do it by counseling and helping other people. Some people do it by helping people with illnesses. Some people do it, whatever it is that they do. That's what they were created to do. There's a need for it. According to our understanding, the Jewish understanding, bread of shame. Yeah, that's one of the things. Devorah, that's one of the things. But let's say he created me to be, I think I've talked about this before, a diamond polisher. And I'm really good at it. And I make beautiful looking diamonds when I polish them. One day I say, well, I'm sick of this. I'm going to go bake bread instead of polishing diamonds. I'm actually missing the mark with what God needs for me to do on this earth. My job is to be a diamond polisher, not a bread baker. Somebody else's job is to be a bread baker. Now, the bread baker maybe doesn't even know what a diamond is, but his breads are great, and people enjoy eating his bread and his pastry. That's what God created him to do, bring joy to people through that. Those of you that are listening in here, some of you are run organizations to help other people, or you help other people, or you feel that that's what God created you for, and it probably is. You have a drive for it. There's a light in you that says, this is what God is needing from me, and it makes you feel better. So what I'm getting down to is, everything we do, you know, in religion, some religions say you just have to take everything by faith, and then you just have to do this, 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 and this, and this, and your life is miserable, and you're created in sin, and it's a terrible thing, and you need God for salvation, and you need God for the next life, and you need all this kind of stuff. But what it boils down to is God needs us to fulfill our duty here on earth, and he supplies everything else. He wants us to do things in a joyful manner and to look at him enjoying happiness. Of course, fear, which we get into, but he wants us, you know, we have a thing called a mitzvah. In other words, fulfilling what God tells us to do, to be kind to people and so forth. And there's different levels. People think, okay, I'm going to put a few coins in a box. I'm going to just give this guy some money, or I'm going to take some food over to somebody's house. Those are great. Those are nice. That's being kind to people. There's other lists of stuff that are mitzvahs, you know, all kinds of things you can do. But there's levels of them. The most important thing is when you do it knowing that this is something God needed you to do. You're fulfilling it. And through it, you feel his love come back to you, that you did what you did, not because it made you feel good, because it made him feel good. Now, I know I'm giving attributes of human beings. There's a word for it, and I can't remember what it is right now. I'm giving attributes to God that really, we can talk about it that way because it's easiest for us to talk about it with the words, and we can't understand it any other way. Let's see. How do you know if you are fulfilling the mission? Okay. You don't. You don't. But if you have something in you that you know that you have to do, whether it be the working with, being a nurse, working with addiction, teaching, and a lot of other things, if that's a strong feeling in you, then that's probably what you were created to do. It's probably the mission that he wants you to handle right now while you're here on this earth. And so we handle it. I've been teaching, I guess, for about 20 years on the things I'm teaching on. I can't seem to get away, even if I want to go teach on something else or even go learn something, I can't get away from it. I'm always right back where I am about working with God. God can't complete creation without our participation. Unless he was to make us creatures we just did things without thinking. And so that's why he created us and gave us the mitzvah. And that's why he tells us, don't take a limb from a living animal. That's kind of a convoluted way to get into one of the 7. Hello there, young lady. Your microphone.
This is my grandson, Billy Troy.
I'm sorry, I saw the curls, but I didn't.
No, I know he has long hair.
Yeah, I know my grandsons do too. That's right.
Yeah, and he's a Noahide, and he's got a day off today because it looks like he's got one of those school sore things. So, you know, we've got to be in isolation when that happens. So,
okay.
But he knows about Hashem, and we have little talks, but he's just going to sit quietly here and listen in, all right?
You're welcome. What's his name?
This is Billy.
Billy, welcome, Billy.
And he 3 generations of us live on the farm, so Billy's been born here. He doesn't know any other home, so he's a very lucky boy. Yes. And we love him very much. Thank you. Just sit there.
What I did bring us around to was the mitzvah of not eating a limb of a living animal, which comes under kindness. And, you know, I know it's discussed a lot, and people debate about it and everything, but essentially we weren't created to eat meat in the beginning. We weren't supposed to eat meat. We were given everything vegetable on this earth we were given to eat, but not meat. And that only happened after the flood. And it happened, God allowed it because he knew we were going to do it anyway. So he said, why make it a sin? Why make it something you got to go in a corner and hide? Okay, do it, but here's some very strict rules how to do it. And it essentially, it's a category that draws attention to how you treat animals, which also brings attention to how you treat other human beings. Because if you're cruel to animals, you're going to be cruel to other human beings. And if you're treat animals properly, then you're going to be nice to other human beings also. That, you know, people have pets, they have dogs, they have cats, some people have horses, people have all kinds of pets, and they're really nice to their pets. Nicer sometimes than they are to human beings. But this includes also actually how we butcher our animals. This includes to make the least amount of pain if we're going to actually eat an animal. Yeah, I got no problem with eating an animal. I mean, I'm a meat eater and a chicken eater and a fish eater. But it's funny today how people see this when they go in the store and they buy their chicken and they buy their pork sausage or they buy their pork chops or buy their meat. And it was funny, and I think it was in Italy, they did a candid camera thing where there was a guy dressed up like a chef and he had sausages, there were pork sausages, and he cooks them up and gives everybody a little bit to eat. And they're, oh man, these are great. Where can we buy them? He says, we're selling them right here. They're all fresh made sausages. And if somebody would come up and say, well, I want 2 pounds of the sausage. And he then bends over and picks up a piglet and drops it into an opening on the table, and you hear this, and you hear this, like the pig squealing, and the people are, no, I don't want that. Don't do that. I can't eat that now. I can't. They never think that package of sausage comes from the killing of an animal. Wait, if you got to do that, I don't want the sausage. Today, in today's society, in most society in the Western world, we don't even think about it. We don't think about how the animals were raised. We don't think about, in Europe, good comment there, Terry. About the Rabbi Nachman's story, yeah, the Garden of Wisdom. There's he has a lot of books, Garden of Emunah, and there's a couple of them. But
Can I just interject something really quick,
yeah.
Based on what you were just talking? I went to go get this book I'm at the point, I'm rereading this book now, and I mean, I read it back during my conversion time, and I'm wanting to reread it with where I'm at in my journey, on my path now. And I'm really getting a lot out of it. Actually, I'm getting more out of it this time than I did the last time. But where I'm at, it's just exactly what you were talking about. You know, finding your mission. He explains it. He's in this part where he's talking about how the clever man wanders around. And after I read this paragraph right here, I closed the book for this week because this is what I need to be thinking about. It says a person's primary search in life should be, what does Hashem want from me? What should I be doing at this stage of my life? If a person believes that what he is doing now is what Hashem wants from him, he will be happy and gratified. He won't waste time looking for some seemingly greener pasture.
Right.
I thought that was pretty good, and it ties in what you were just talking about.
Yes, it does quite well. No, that's the truth. There's a way you get to that point of thinking, and I'm going to talk about it in just a minute. I just made myself a note. because I want to finish off now on the being kind to animals and to people. And anything you do, people think that I have to do, and what I'm created for is some big mission, some huge, oh man, it's got to help mankind, it's got to do this, it's got to do that. And in all the years I've been teaching, there's a question I get basically from women that says, well, I just don't want to be a housewife the whole time. I want to do something important. When I hear that, I feel sorry for the woman that's asking me the question, because being the housewife is one of the most important jobs anybody can have, because you're forming the next generation. The next generation of human beings are going to come out and work with God. And if they don't have a proper upbringing, if they don't have a proper outlook, the world goes into chaos like it does today, like it is today. In the United States, when people had started two jobs in a family to pay the bills, and the kids are kind of left hanging here. Let's let the teachers handle it. Let's this handle it. Let that handle it. And the kids have kind of gone off the end of the plank here, and so there's a little bit of chaos, or more chaos in the world than there was before this period of time. Some people are born to, and I'm going to say women right now because we're talking about women, their job is to take care of the house, the spiritual environment, the children, bringing them up. The education that forms most kids happens in the first 5 years, 6. Their thinking patterns start. And if the thinking patterns aren't there and they're a little askew, the rest of their life, everything they see, they're going to look at a little slanted. And they need direction, and it's important. And they're not going to get it in daycare from the time they're a month old and under somebody else's care all the time and all that. One of the most important jobs on this earth is bringing up the next generation. And we talk, what do we see in the Chumash and in all of the Tanakh? The women take care of the beginning education of the next generation. They get them looking in the right direction. And in God's eyes, it's one of the most important things that can happen. Otherwise, a person can go till they're 70 years old and look wrong, and all of a sudden, whoops, wow, but 70 years I didn't look right. All of a sudden, I'm looking right. And it can just happen. Now, I'm not talking about people that grow up in a culture where maybe they're taught a particular religion. I'm talking about how they interact and how they think about other people and the kindness they show to other people. And this all starts with don't eat the limb of a living animal. Everybody says, wow, who's going to do that? Who's going to eat the limb of a living animal? Hunters, when they would go out hunting, and some hunters, I don't know, there's so many that do it today, but they still do it. There's like a rite of passage they go through, and they kill their first big game, or they kill their first deer, or they kill something the first time that they're going to take home and eat. And some of them have this rite where before the animal is even, the heart stopped beating, they cut the heart out and they eat the heart. Why do they do that? Well, I'm a big guy, I'm a macho man, and see, I killed this animal, so I get to eat its heart. There's still cultures in the world that will walk up to the bulls or the sheep or the rams, and they're feeding in their fields, and they'll open a vein and get a cup and drink the water, drink the blood. People still do that today on this earth. But because of what God wants from us, a lot of people have stopped doing that. Don't eat the limb of a living animal. I can't think of another experience where they would eat the limb of a living animal. But when you start thinking about it, how I don't want to use the word evil, but how terrible way of thinking you have. Because if you can do that to an animal, you can do that to a human being. Your head becomes hardened to the fact that you're causing pain, that you're being unkind. That's an easy one to grasp. But what about when you're walking down the street and you bump into somebody and you just keep on going? What about the guy that cuts in line in front of somebody? What about the people that say nasty things to people on the street or throw rocks at them or attack them because of the color of their skin or their religion or whatever? It all comes under the same thing of being kind. And so I think I have it almost finished, and I'm going to show it to Terry here in a week or two. Under the 7 categories that we have, or the 7 universal laws, I've found about 214 do's and don'ts, which are mitzvot, positive mitzvot, negative mitzvot, we call them. The rules are, we call mitzvot. And they're every human being has those same ones. Now, there are people that Israelites have a few more to do because they take care of God's apartment, I'm going to call it. Because God, God has a need to interact with us. We'll never understand why or what, but he has a need to interact with us. It's very clear in the Torah. And the interaction essentially occurs on one place on this earth. The essence of God comes down to the earth in one particular place. It's called Mount Moriah. And that's where the Bet HaMikdash, the holy temple is. That's where the Holy of Holies is. That's where the Ark of the Covenant sits. That's where the Shekhinah sits. Connecting earth and God together is where Jacob had the dream of the up and down the ladder. And there are a lot of other events occurred there. The point is, for some reason, and we don't know why, God has a need to do this. He wants to come, he doesn't want us to go up to him, he wants to come down to us. So we're building him, we call it a Dira B'Tachtonim, his apartment in the lowest levels here on earth, because we are the furthest away from the highest we can possibly be. But he wants to be here with us and interact with us. He wants to be able for us to feel his love. Not his anger, his love. He's not coming down here to go, no, you're bad people and I'm going to strike you with lightning. There's a need for this love to come down. Creation is created. In creation, we have 2 sides to it. Yeah, you can't even be convulsing. That's true. There's 2 sides to creation. There's Gvorah, which we call Elohim, and it's nature. It's everything that happens in nature. It goes by rules, and they're unbending rules. They just happen. Everything happens in nature, however it happens. If we had to live by just that side, we couldn't exist. Because it means if we overstepped our bounds just a fraction of how God wanted things to be in creation, something would happen to us. In other words, we wouldn't exist, or there'd be some kind of punishment. Nature is black and white. Lightning hits, nothing you can do about it. On the other side, we have mercy, or Hesed. Abraham was the perfect picture of it. Everybody came by, come and eat, rolled up beside the tent, hunted up people to share things with. But he overdid it in a way. Some people on this earth overdo it. You all know people that they run themselves ragged helping other people. Their families suffer for it, or they give too much money when they're helping out other people with charity or with whatever it is. And it affects and hurts their family and them. And the whole Torah is about, don't be over here with the black and white, the real tough. Here it is, and nothing changes. And the overabundance of mercy for people, we're supposed to find the middle of the road and walk down it. Balanced. Everything is balanced. So when we go to do something, we want to make sure we do it with balance. The way our forefathers or our fathers are described, Abraham was Chesed, Isaac was Gvurah, the strong, tough side, and Jacob was Tiferet, or the middle road. He had some of this and some of this. He brought it all together. And that's why from that point, we could have the Israel and 12 tribes and everything go out. Abraham spent his whole life just wandering, going here and there, of course, under orders of God. But every place he went, he was helping people. Isaac never left the state of Israel. It wasn't called Israel back then, it was called Canaan, but he never went outside the borders of it. He stayed in where he was supposed to stay. Then and Jacob was able to go out, come in, go out, and then through him and through the time in Egypt, we got the Jewish nation, the Jewish people who came back to the land. That is a balance, because what happened there is when God gave us at Mount Sinai the information he gave us, and we started to share it with people, it was for the whole world. We were just kind of a pipeline for it. So you and I and everybody else, we have to remember that our job is not to be, I'm going to use this word because it's the only word I know, religious. You got to do this, and if you don't do this, you're sinning, you're going to hell, and you need salvation and all that kind of stuff. It's not to be that. And it's not to be, okay, do whatever you want, everything's okay, and yeah, too bad that this has happened, I'll help you here and I'll help you there. We're supposed to be in the middle of the road where we're helping people walk that road with their connection with God. Each and every one of us. And I know some people get overzealous for things, and that's okay because it's their mission to do it. It's their mission to do it. You know, somebody asked me the other day, and I guess they must have been close to my age, maybe a little less, because he asked me, he says, well, tell me Mother Teresa's going to hell because she believed in whatever she believed in. And I said, no, I can't say that, because God has people do things that he wants, and it becomes a fire in them, and she did it. She helped people. She gave her life to helping people, so I'm sure that there's something there that we don't see. But if you look back at her, you don't find a religious person in the way I just described religion. You find a person that walked a road down the middle, but helped people all the time. Yes, she was Catholic, I think she was. Okay, but she helped people all the time. She was kind to people. She nursed people. She took care of people. She wasn't the religious. In other words, put all the other stuff that the other religion says you have to do, or else you're going to hell or something. But when we understand all of this, we understand something else. The only thing we need, we don't need to be saved from anything in our next life. We just have to do what God requires us to do. He needs us to do in this life, and then we continue on with him in the next life. And he wants every single person to do that. He doesn't want people not to do it. But he can't tell us you do it. He didn't create us with that. That's the only thing you can do, because then that makes us puppets. I keep coming back around to this. And I was reading something today that talked about idolatry. And the beginnings of idolatry were everybody knew there was one God in the beginning. I mean, they came from Adam, and this is a whole new another teaching, not a new teaching. But when they started having little things to worship, they figured, okay, well, there's intermediaries in between us and God. And so we'll just, instead of asking God for this stuff because he really doesn't care, we'll ask the intermediaries, the angels and the stars and the trees and other stuff. And that's what true idolatry is. I'm not talking about paganism. I'm talking about idolatry. And today we look around and we see something very interesting. And it's people are waking up to this fact that there are two forms of idolatry still alive in the world today. They're very much alive, although people don't recognize them as idolatry. One of them, of course, is using the intermediary between him and God, which two major religions do. A lot of other little ones do it, but two major religions do it. And the second thing is arrogance. People don't realize that arrogance is idolatry, total idolatry. You're putting yourself before God. You're putting yourself between you and God. And this is the hardest thing for any of us to overcome. The arrogance. Well, I think it's this way, and yeah, I'm going to do this because I want to do it. And we don't think like we're supposed to think. Our thinking doesn't focus properly. And what are we doing? And what am I doing teaching, Jewish person teaching everybody out there how to connect with God? Because everybody just has to think the same way about other people and who God is. And leave all this other stuff aside, which includes changing ourselves. You know, I spent years saying, look what I did. And when I would set goals, yearly goal for income for myself, not realizing God sets it, and I'm not in charge of that. But every year I'd set a goal for a higher and higher income, and when I would hit it at the end of the year, I'd have a big party. Look what I did. Look what I did. I did it. Well, I didn't do anything, I realize now. There was a reason it happened. I don't begin to understand all of them. But we have to move away from arrogance, which is idolatry. And that's what being a B'nai Noach is. By the way, let me introduce something here, right here. B'nai Noach means children of Noah. It also means sons of Noah. Banot Noach are the daughters of Noah. Banot. An individual is a bat Noach, daughter of Noah. B'nai Noach, if you're talking about a male, one individual is a ben Noach, or the son of Noah. A group is called B'nai, sons of. For a woman, it's bat Noach, and for a group of women, it's called banot Noach. But all of men and women together are called B'nai Noach also. That's the way Hebrew language works. So when we do something, if I'm unkind to somebody, it's the same as if I'm eating the limb off a live animal. In other words, when I'm going to go do something, my first thought has to be not about what is the other person going to say, not about what I think, but what does God think? Now, to go back to what I talked about, what's important, the most important job, I believe, on this earth is the women raising the kids up until about age 5 or 6, even 7, and then them not being latchkey kids after that also. The women form the way the children think in those years. Now, I know there's a part of my life when I was young when my mother said to me, just wait till your father gets home. You got me so angry. Just wait till your father gets home. Oh, that was great. But what if she said to me, what do you think your father God has to think about what you just did? Maybe I'd have thought differently. In other words, before I went to do something, I think, is this what God wants me to do? Not what my father wants me to do, because I can get away with stuff with my father, because I can do stuff he'll never know about. You can't do it with God. Nothing is hidden from him. He's there and he sees everything you do, so you have a responsibility there. Who gets to teach the next generation this idea? Who gets to get people thinking in the proper way? It's one of the most important jobs. I've always talked about it in all my teachings, but it's one of the most important jobs on this earth, is the women taking care of the home and the children in the home and growing them up. So when you go out to look for what it is God wants you to do, don't think that you have to go have a career, or you have to have some super duper calling or something like that, because the biggest calling on earth is keeping people thinking in the right track. None of us would be doing anything we're doing today if somebody along the line had kept people thinking in the right track. Now we are. God has a need for you and for me to help people correct their way of thinking. It's a need he has, because he wants everybody to do it properly. He wants everybody to get on board and finish his picture of creation. The Torah is the blueprint of creation. And he depends on us to finish it off. And if we don't do what he says, do it, without thinking about why I shouldn't do it, or changing ideas, or reinterpreting it. When God says, do this, and we say, oh, he's commanding us to do this, we got to understand it's a need that he has for this particular thing to be done. It's an actual need. If it's not done, things aren't right. Even when we go through the 613 and we look at all the rules about the Holy Temple, and we're studying now a section of Gemara that talks about actually how the temple was built, what rooms were in the temple, how everything was set up, and it's amazing. I never went into it that deep before. But everything there has a need. There's nothing there that doesn't have a need and a reason for it to be there. And that's why God says, okay, I need you guys to do this, to put the earth into shape so I can move in with you guys and be close to you guys and be with you. And that's why we call it a dirah, an apartment or a house down here with us. He doesn't say, okay, everybody come up there with me and we're going to fly around with the clouds and play some harps and all this kind of stuff. He wants to come down and just be with us and be with life with us. And our next level of life, we're going to be here. Look, this week's Haftorah section, or the every week there's a Torah portion. Last week was Kititse, when you go out, and we talked about it a little bit. When you go out, and how you're supposed to go out and influence people, and how you make it a personal thing. And you can go back and watch the beginning of that. But this week's Torah portion is Kitavo, when you come in. The first one is when you go out. This one is when you come in. And there's an Isaiah. By the way, for those of you who don't know, there's a thing called the Haftorah that is read after the Torah portion every week. And they're connected together. They're chosen very carefully. Why? How are they chosen? Not to hide anything, but there have been times in the last 2,500 years where we were forbidden to teach Torah. So what they did was each Torah portion has what we call a Haftorah, or a section from another part of the Bible is read, prophecies, basically. And when we read that prophecy, then we say, oh, that's from Kitavo, and now we talk about Kitavo, the Torah section for the week, without having to pull out the Torah and teach Torah. When the Romans came in, or the people that said you can't teach Torah came in, we were talking about Isaiah, not Torah. So it was like a clandestine thing, between us, how we could keep things going forward without losing it. Anyway, this week's Haftorah is Isaiah chapter 60, and it's 1 through 22. Yeah, it's the whole chapter. It's very interesting. It starts out with, arise, shine, for your light is come, and the glory of the Lord is shone upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and a gross darkness will cover the kingdoms. And the Lord shall shine upon you, and his glory shall appear over you. And the nations shall go by your light, and the kings by the brilliance of your shine. Now this is a prophecy to Israel, but it's also a prophecy to people of the nations. Lift up your eyes all around and see that all have gathered, they have come to you. Your sons shall come from afar, and your daughters shall be raised up on your side. Then you shall see and be radiant, and your heart shall be startled and become enlarged, for the abundance of the west shall be turned over to you. Now it talks about all the countries of the world, the rich countries of the world, coming to Israel and learning things. You can go ahead and read it. It talks about in Jerusalem in verse 10, foreigners shall build your walls, their kings shall serve you, for in my wrath I struck you, talking to Israel, but in my chesed, in my grace, have I had mercy on you. In other words, all the things that are being taught in religions about how terrible and how stiff-necked and how stupid Israel is, God's saying, yeah, okay, people make mistakes, children make mistakes, but they learn. But the love doesn't stop, and the covenant doesn't stop. It's made between himself and other people. And then verse 12 says something very interesting. For the nation and the kingdom that shall not serve you shall perish, and the nation shall be destroyed. Now, is he talking about being our servants? No. Serving us is helping us prepare the world for God so that he can come down and be with us. And when this is going to happen? In the Messianic times. It says that the sun and moon won't shine anymore. There'll be light. Your sun shall no longer set, neither shall your moon be gathered in. You shall no longer have sun by light for day or for brightness. The moon shall not give you light, but the Lord shall be for you an everlasting light, and your God for your glory. We see God today, and I think we've talked about this before. Right now, look at Angela's camera. I see rays of sun coming in through her window. Now, if I went outside and looked up the sun, I couldn't see the rays anymore because they're part of the sun. So for us to see a sun ray, it has to be filtered down, so it comes through a curtain, it comes through or maybe it comes through a cloud, and all of a sudden you see a shaft of light come down from the sun over top. If it's not filtered down, we can't see it. We're going to be, our level of seeing and experiencing is going to get to the point where we can see everything through God's light. That it doesn't have to be so filtered down. What happens when you put a pair of sunglasses on? When you're outside, all of a sudden you can see better because you're filtered down, but there'll be a time when your eyes, your mind will be adjusted so you don't have to put filters on. You will experience the closeness of God, the brightness of God, because we've grown to that level. In other words, we've become a higher level of a human being than we are today. That's the only way I can put it, because we're closer to God. So it says, in your people, all of them righteous shall inherit the land forever, a sign of my planning, the work of my hands in which I will glory. God's saying the work of his hands in which he will glory. Guess what? We're the work of his hands. He has a need for us to do certain things so that he can continue with his plans. So everybody has a choice in their life to be needy. I need, it's for me, I need to do this, I need to do that, or to be needed. What a difference, to be needy or to be needed. What a great feeling to think that God needs me. He created me because he needs me to do something for him, a one-on-one relationship. I'm not some poor little victim over in the corner, constantly crying out for help, constantly throwing myself on the floor in front of the altar saying, oh, I'm such a terrible person, oh, save me, whatever it is. I used to teach, when I took trips to America, I used to teach at different places, and I used to go twice a year. In some places I'd be there once a year, some places I'd be there twice a year. There's one particular place where I was there twice a year, and it was in a church. Every time I went there on a Sunday, the same guy all of a sudden would run up to the front, throw himself on the floor, start weeping and banging his head on the floor and saying what a terrible person he was and he needed God to save him, or whoever it was he was looking for to save him. And I saw this at least 4 times. That means it's 2 years. I don't know if he did it every Sunday or just when I was there. I don't know. But it made me feel so bad for him that he had such a low opinion of himself, that he was so needy, that he needed God to come down and tap him on the shoulder and say, okay, you're okay. I got you handled. We're needed by him, and he wants us to get it handled for him. And each one of those commandments is a need that God has, a need in which to carry out what he wants done so that we get done what he wants done. All of them, it is teaching us how to be a complete human being and accomplish the rest of creation. It all can't be accomplished if we don't do it. If all the people on earth said, well, God's not my king, all of a sudden he's not a king because he has no subjects. They make something else king over them. At the time of the flood, after the birth of Enosh, and we'll get into that whole timeline at a different time, and then again in time of Sodom and Gomorrah, that we call it, people just threw away God. And they suffered for it. They paid for it. But they were no longer his subjects. We have to be his subjects. We have to submit to him and say, yes, okay, you created me. I didn't ask to be created. You created me as a man or a woman. I didn't ask to be created like it. Okay, so what do you want from me? What do you want me to do? You created me. Here I am. What do you want me to do? What do you need me to do for you? And that's where the Torah comes in. Everything's there. We are needed by the creator of all things only because he did the creation. If he never did the creation, he wouldn't have needed us. Somewhere along the line, he had, and I'm just, what's the name? Homomorphic terms I'm putting, is that the way you say it? there's a technical way to say it. We're giving God attributes that he really doesn't have, because that's a form of idolatry too. But he allows us to do things like he has a strong right arm, and he speaks and things like that, because we couldn't understand it any other way. Our brains don't get there. So we're allowed to do that. And so why all of this stuff? Why was I born as a man in a Jewish family in the year 1945 on the 14th of March? Why? God created me because he had a need for something to be done here. It's funny, we talk about it, we talk about it in class when we're studying. We read about people that fulfilled what God needed them to do, and they went to be with God. Their lifetime on this earth was over with. Whether it was the age of 5 years old or 26 or 38 or whatever it was. Ha'ari and Rabbi Nachman and some others left at very early ages, left this earth. But if they hadn't, they would have maybe tried to give out secrets that God didn't want them to give out, but they just finished the job God wanted them to do, and so he brought that soul back home to be with him, because that's where we originally came from. So I said, it's good. I joke about it. I say, it's good. I have no idea, and I've been doing such a terrible job that I've been here 74, almost 75 years. I evidently haven't completed the task I was sent here for. But it's just like it's a joke, you know. There are other things involved in that. But it goes all the way back to don't eat the limb of a living animal. You see how complicated these things can get? Your whole line of thinking has to change. One statement has to change your whole line of thinking. And the don't eat the limb of a living animal, if you look it up, you look at Genesis 9:4, it says it in there. It said it someplace else, but I can't see it right now. I finally got my new glasses, by the way. And also the last one of the universal laws is establishing courts of justice. Now, for Israel and for those that are joining Israel, the Noahides, which that bugs me a little bit, that name, but the Noahides, we don't have real courts of justices anymore. I mean, we do have the rabbinical courts. We don't have a Sanhedrin. Attempts have been made to put it back together again, but it just hasn't been working. This is just not the time, I guess. God isn't asking for me the time, but the countries have courts of justice. They try to base it on the Torah commandments in most countries, especially the ones that say they're democratic and Western type countries. But they don't, there's a lot of things they leave out as far as what God wants done. They tried to set up a Noahide Sanhedrin back in the late 60s, early 70s. It just completely deteriorated and fell apart. And there were some pretty heavy hitters that were doing it. I mean, people that were knew who God was, and they followed the commandments and all that, but the thing just fell apart. And everything comes in its time. God lets everything flourish in its time. There's a season and a time for everything. You've all heard that from Solomon, right? There's a time for this and a time for that, and a time for this and a time for that. We're coming down to the end of the tikkunim, or the fixing, that happened back in the Garden of Eden. One thing some other religions have right, that there was the original sin that was done in the Garden of Eden. Basically, we look at it this way. Adam was created on Friday afternoon. If he just waited until Shabbat, he probably would have gotten permission to eat from that tree. But he couldn't wait. His arrogance and his ego got a hold of him. along with Eve, and they ate, brought missing the mark into the world, not following God's instructions properly, which caused other things to happen. And it's almost 6,000 years, 5,780 years coming up since that incident in the Garden of Eden. And the whole time, human beings have been going through a correction. Humanity has been going through a correction to put them back on the right track again. We're this close to the coming of our Messiah, who's going to be a regular guy, who's going to help us finish off the job that God gave us to do. He's going to help us get peace in the world. The third temple is going to be built. Where God's going to dwell in, or his essence, the Shekinah, which is female, by the way, is going to dwell there. And then the Messianic time will start. During that time, nations will have the choice to sign up or not, but then there'll be a red line in the sand. It'll be too late. And we're going to step right over the line to the next level of life. Those of us that aren't here when it happens, our bodies aren't here, but we still are. Because when our bodies die, they're just a vehicle for our souls, for our godly portion of us, to carry us around, get us somewhere, gives us hands to do things and a mouth to say things. The soul doesn't have those things. What it is just to be a soul with God, I have no idea, because I can't remember, but we've all been there. None of us can remember that. But we're going to the next level of life. Now, when a person, the body dies, some of them died 5,000 years ago, 4, 3, 2, whatever. The body dies, but the soul itself is like, goes back to God, which is a form of sleep for us in our minds. That's why they say sleep at night is 1/60th of death. When you lay down and go to sleep at night, your soul, that part of you that's hooked to God, actually goes back to him during the night, and he sends it back down when you wake up. And that's why we say the Modeh Ani prayer every time we wake up. I thank you. I'm trying to translate it in English in my head, and I'm not getting anywhere. Thank you, God, for not God, because the word God is not mentioned in this prayer. King, the living and existing King. Thank you for giving me back my soul in your great mercy. And you can look it up, you can Google it. I don't have it in front of me right now. You have it there.
I've got it in the little Noahide prayer booklet.
Yeah.
And it just says, I offer thanks to you, living and eternal King, for you have mercifully restored my soul within me. Your faithfulness is great.
Right. His faithfulness is great. That hooks up with what Abraham, the thing that says he credited his faith for as righteousness or something in Genesis. We don't know if it's Abraham telling God this or God telling Abraham this. We like to say it was God saying to Abraham, but it could have been either way. The point is, he has so much control that he has to personally send back every day when we wake up, our soul. And he does it because he's faithful to us. And we should be faithful to him. And we say it in the morning to get our head thinking in the right direction. So the whole during the day, we remember who he's faithful to us, so we have to do what his needs are. Let me tell you how things work with him. And I just heard this a couple hours ago. There was a babysitter in, I think it was Los Angeles, a Jewish young girl who babysat for a family that was Jewish, but they were, okay, we're Jewish, so what? And that was it. And at night, the two boys, to put them to sleep at night, they were rambunctious. Just, come on, let's learn a prayer. And she taught them 6 words, and every night they would say those 6 words. And she was a babysitter there. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 6 words. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. A few years back, the oldest boy was in the U.S. Army, and he was in Afghanistan. And he felt something. They were driving down through one of the cities, and he felt really bad, and something was wrong. And he turned around to said to his other guys who weren't Jewish, just, come on, say this with me. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Well, before he had finished the Shema, and he turned his head, went off in front of them one of those package bombs they put on the road that they run over, or a mine or whatever. And pieces of shrapnel ripped through the front where he was sitting. And if his head hadn't been turned like that, he probably would have lost his head. But it cut his arm real bad, which he recovered from. Also, all the other guys had moved down a little forward to listen to him, and it saved their lives, whatever cut the roof of the vehicle. This guy really didn't even know what he was saying. This babysitter taught him to do it. He forgot about it. He's in the middle of Afghanistan. And all of a sudden, he realizes this has to be said right now to everybody in the Humvee. Not all of them Jewish. And it saved their lives. God is faithful to us. He didn't have to do that. But he's faithful to people, even if it's just to wake you up, to show you, see how faithful I am? I need you. Come work with me. It's just an amazing experience this week. Sharon and I were listening. We listened to about 10 or 12 different witness things. And we've all heard them from people in other religions. Oh, I prayed and this was done for me and that was done for me and I needed this and I needed that. But these experiences aren't like that. One more quick story. There was a family that had flown into, I don't know, Long Island or something. They were going to visit a grave of a grandmother at a Jewish cemetery. And they went down and they found the cemetery finally, and it wasn't very busy. And they went down and they could drive right up to the grave. And so they did the prayers over the grave. And a little ways over, they noticed there's a funeral going on. And at the end of the funeral, when everything was said and done, everybody got in their cars and left. And this backhoe was supposed to fill in the grave. So the guy said, no, this doesn't feel right. I can't let this happen. And they got to their grandmother's grave because something a few weeks earlier had given him a feeling he had to be there at a certain day at a certain time and do prayers. So he's there doing this. So he goes over to the grave and he says to the backhoe operator, do you mind if I fill in the hole? The guy says, what do I care? One thing less I have to do. So the backhoe operator gave him a shovel, and he shoveled and filled in the whole grave. He says it took him about an hour and a half to do all the work. He was an older guy. He gets it all done, and it's all filled in. And when we bury somebody, just a little placard on cardboard goes up, the name of the person. 30 days later, the stone is put in. He picked it up and he looked at the name. And he says, that name is so familiar to me. But I don't know what it has to do with it. I don't remember it. So he goes home that night, and he went to a yeshiva his whole life when he was growing up. And he called the head of the yeshiva and he says, I want to tell you something that happened to me. I want to give you the person's name. that helped me here with something. And when he gave him the name, the guy at the yeshiva, there was just like silence on the phone. He says, let me tell you a story. He says, you know, when you first went to yeshiva, do you remember that we had to get money for you? And we had to get someone to pay for the yeshiva and get your plane ticket, everything, because your dad was out of work at the time and things were pretty bad for the family. The guy said, yeah. He says, in all those years you were in yeshiva, somebody paid your tuition for you. The guy says, yeah, I never met the guy, but, you know, I do know that somebody did that. I never, when Jews do that, they don't say, go to the person and knock on the door and say, hey, look what I'm doing for you. So the head of the yeshiva says, you know that guy that you buried? He's the guy that paid for your schooling your whole life. To me, those are amazing stories. But this is what we call ashkaha pratit. You're working with him, you're doing what he needs, he gives you something back. So the guy that gave the money, he was given a gift of this man doing this. And the man that did it was given the chance to thank the guy that did it for him. Things like this just, it shows if you reach up, he's reaching down. He's going to take care of you. You fulfill what he needs, he's going to fulfill what you need. And this is the way God works. You just don't go to him and say, oh, how terrible I am, and I'm just a bad person, and make me better, and make me more patient, and help me get rid of my arrogance, and help, give. That's not what it's about. God will reach down, and each and every human being gets a little smack once in a while, or gets a little thought once in a while. God puts in your head, and God waits for you to then turn around and say, oh, yes. And reach up to him and say, what is it you need for me to do? Not want, but need for me to do. And I'm in the habit of saying want also, Terry, but it's a need. What is it you need me to do? I need you to get on an airplane and go here or go there. But wait a minute. I don't want to do that. If it's not about what we want, it's what God wants. Get up and go, and he'll set things up amazingly in advance. Here's a young Jewish babysitter. He taught a Jewish guy when he was like 4, 5, 6 years old, Shema Yisrael, preparing him for 20-some years later when he's in Afghanistan. It was a preparation. And what happened was, because the boy reached up and said to God, you're in charge, Shema Yisrael. Do you know when he got back home and he got healed, and he actually became a frum guy and started following, lived a life the way God needed him to live it. This is what discovering what your relationship with God is all about. Not what he can do for us, but what he needs us to do for him. I mean, great, God can do whatever he wants and think whatever he wants, but he doesn't want to do it for himself. He wants us to do it. So, I think that's going to end up the meeting tonight, unless anybody has any questions. But I see, I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the chat, where it talks about the living. Terry says, I read that the other day that the animal has to be fully dead. It cannot even be convulsing. That's true. It has to be totally, totally dead. And the laws of how to slaughter animals for eating cover that. Because if it's done the proper way, it's almost instantaneous death for the animal. No heartbeat, no brainwave, everything. Totally dead. That's what I understand also, Terry. We covered a lot of subjects which all come under being kind. but what it also means being kind to God. God needs me to do this, so I'm going to do it. Not thinking we're not supposed to think for him. We're supposed to have a relationship where we know who he is and know what he wants from us, which sometimes takes a little bit of getting ourselves out of the way. But he doesn't want us to be aesthetics. Is that what we call it? Aesthetic? You go it? I don't even know the word. I'm going to go live in a cave and pray all day long type thing. And I'm going to eat berries and stuff like that. We don't have to do that. We can live a life. He wants us to be joyful. He wants everything we do for him to do in joy. If we don't do it in a joyful manner, we haven't done anything. If we do it in a joyful manner and fulfill the letter of the law of being kind to people and giving them what they need or helping them or whatever, that's okay. But it's not the highest level you can get to when you're doing these things. And that's a whole program in itself. I have to remember to talk about it. But what are we teaching here? Why do I sit here and bring people together? God has a need for each one of you. He has a need for that relationship with you. And it's our obligation to fulfill the need he has. A lot of people think, well, it's God's obligation to fulfill my need. Well, no, it's the other way around. When we do what he needs us to do, we're reaching up. When we reach up to him, we're actually having him bring down to us amazing things that we could never even imagine. Knowledge, and, health, and long life, and all kinds of things. Maybe we weren't millionaires. Somebody said to me the other day, I don't know, I made some comment. He says, wouldn't it be really nice to be a millionaire? And I said, no. He said, what are you talking about? This is a guy, the manager of our show across the street. He said, what do you mean? I said, look, he gives me what I need, and I'm happy. And then I can try to give him what he needs from me. He goes, you're right. Well, of course, that's what we teach. And that's why we try to get more and more people involved in working for God and giving him what he needs back to him. For being a complete person. I mean, none of us asked to be here. None of us asked to be born. None of us asked for any of this stuff. Nobody asked, the way I heard it was, nobody asked for a house mortgage and a car payment, but we got it anyway. So why do we even choose to live this way? We didn't even choose to have life. Well, because God needs us to do something to help complete the cycle that will take us into the next level of life, where we leave behind what's going on this earth right now. We don't leave earth behind. We should leave what's going on earth right now. It becomes like we could say, a new earth. Just like every morning you wake up, it's a new day. Yesterday's over with, gone. It's nowhere around. And tomorrow will happen tomorrow. The only reality is the minute we're living right now. That's all there is. There's nothing on either side of it. I mean, we like to think there is. But all we have is the moment. And at every moment, we should be connected and do what God needs from us. There's a saying in Pirkei Avot, I think it is, repent one day before you die. And that comes from Hebrew writings. That's a pretty deep statement. Repent one day before you die. Because you don't know if the next day you're going to be here or not. So that means, okay, I have to take care of today. Not next year, next month, next week. I just have to do what I have to do today. Get through today, and then tomorrow we'll get through tomorrow. So anybody have any questions or want to discuss anything else or whatever? Let's open it up and see what we got, because I've been talking a long time here. Go ahead, Chrissy.
I have a question. When we talk about our souls and what happens, prior to our birth, after our life ends, but one of the questions I had was actually from one of my relatives, and we understand that the Jewish teaching about reincarnation, that our souls are recycled. That's not a good word, but I'm sure you know what I'm saying. Does that same thing apply to Noahides? And when I was asked that, I had to stop and think about it. I had just assumed that, but I didn't feel confident in saying, yes, that's 100% right. So I said to him, I will find out and be, confident in what I answer you. So what is the, look, I'll just give you an example. Years of nursing always taught me lots of things, but I can remember an old midwife always used to say when the little babies were born, oh, this is a fairly new soul, And we didn't argue with them because they were like God, the midwives. And then you'd have another one say, oh, this is an old soul, it's been here a few times. And, I can never get those things out of my mind, whether they were just popular folklore or is there any truth in it for non-Jews?
There's truth in it for every human being.
Okay.
We call it Gilgul Neshamot, or the cycle of the souls.
Uh-huh.
And there are new souls that come out. There are souls that are created to be special people, like David was created in a special way, and our great leaders and sages that have taught us about God, the great righteous people, that you have to be born that way. You can't, it's not something you work into. But yes, souls are it's recycled. What else can it be? They come back, and why do they come back? To fix something that they didn't get right last time.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you don't know what you didn't get right last time. So what you got to do is start all over again and just do everything that you can possibly do to get it right. And when you spend your life looking for where does right start with, or you never taught where to look for the right, then you got a problem. Now, what's happening on Earth today is the people we call Noahides, there's like a tsunami happening. There's this huge wave coming forward. All these souls that have been here before are starting to wake up and say, wait a minute, maybe this is the fix I'm supposed to do. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. I have to get all this other stuff out of my head and do the fix I'm supposed to do for God. Because this is what he needs from me. The Messiah can't come if we don't do the needs that need fulfilling. And there's two ways he's going to come. We either fulfill it, and it's going to be a peaceful thing, or we don't fulfill it, and the world's going to go through some real tribulations. And those that survive will fulfill it and go on to the next level of life. But yes, everybody has that chance to do it again. God gives everybody a chance to. That's why there's no such thing as hell. There's no eternal punishment. Now, there is something for Jewish people called Gehinnom, and I don't know if Noahides go through it or not. That's where the whole idea of hell came from. When a Jewish body dies and the soul leaves, and we were not, let's say we were reformed or conservative, or we didn't do the right things we were supposed to do, we go through a period of time of correction. It lasts 11 months, according to what our sages tell us. Depending on what our correction needs to be, it can be a very cold, bitter experience, or it can be a very too hot experience. And then after the 11 months, the soul gets ready to come back down again. It's even so emphatic that when a parent dies, there's a mourning period of 11 months, and the son is supposed to say what we call the Kaddish twice a day or 3 times a day for the parents, and 11 months, and then stop, because then the soul is ready to go back through the recycling again. So that the mourning periods for Jewish people are, of course, the 1 week sitting Shiva, we call it, real deep mourning. That's for us. Then you got 30 days. At the end of 30 days, you go back to the gravesite and you hold another ceremony. The reason for that is when we finish the burying of the body, the last thing we say to them is, we hope we got everything right. We did it to your satisfaction, God and the person. But the soul hangs around for about 30 days. It's so used to being attached to the body, there's some confusion here and there's some stuff going on. After 30 days, it goes back where it belongs. And then we do what we call, by saying the Kaddish, and by doing a mitzvah in honor of, or studying in honor of, as a matter of fact, I forgot to mention that tonight's study and everything we're doing is in the memory of Nancy Overall, and what we call a Lui Neshama, to raising up of her soul before God. And he knows that my intention was to say it in the beginning, so it's been in her, to her raising up of her soul before God. This whole time we've done it. And it's a proper thing to do for anybody, your parents or anybody you can do this for. You can sit down and say, I'm studying to the merit of, and then name a person, or to the healing of, and then name a person. It's calling the person before God.
So,
let me just finish this one sentence. We believe when you sit down to study before God, he sits down with you. He's helping you study and learn. So you're telling him, okay, I'm sitting here and this is the person we're talking about while we're studying. So go ahead, Chrissy. Go ahead.
So I was right in my mind originally. So what you've said has cleared that up. Also, when you say about the soul sort of hovering for about 30 days after the death, is that also applied, do you think, to Noahide souls as well? Like those teachings we hear that I assume are applying to the Jewish nation, are those particular things, but in regard to the death of a person, is that also the same for a Noahide?
Well, I'm going to answer it this way.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human beings. We all have the soul of God. The part of us was blown into our nose when the first man was created, Adam Rishon. So we were all there with Adam. And so no matter what religion or whatever we are, here we are. We're that same being.
Mm-hmm.
The basic difference between a Jewish soul and a non-Jewish soul is that there came a time, and it was probably at Mount Sinai, is where most of the sages place it, where a certain spark was put into the Jewish soul. That's all I can call it, is a spark. So that it ignites something in them to keep them on the path, and they pass it on to their children and their children's children. Mm-hmm. It's like a little mark. Do you know that a Cohen is marked in his DNA? You can't tell if anybody's Jewish or not by all these DNA tests. Boy, people are ripping people off something big with these DNA tests. But a Cohen has a certain structure in his DNA that any Cohen anywhere on earth has exactly the same. This was discovered through DNA tests on I think the name of the African tribe was Lamba or Lambada, I forget which by mistake some Israeli guys were trekking around Africa years ago, and they came to a village that was empty. And there was an elderly person there, a member of the tribe. Where is everybody? How come your village is empty? There's nothing here. There's nobody cooking food. Everything's empty. And he said, well, once a year we go up on that mountain over there and we all pray to a rock up there. And, they got, oh boy, this is idolatry. This is, but once a year, the whole tribe climbs the mountain and prays to the rock. So the next day, they asked somebody, at the end of the day, everybody came back to the tribe. They're going to hang around. They're curious. They asked one of the guys, a tour guide or whatever from the tribe, take us up to that rock you guys prayed at. He said, okay. He took him up there and said, oh, here's the rock. And the guys noticed there's a faint engraving on the rock. And they did one of these where you put a piece of paper on it and you go, and they took it, they folded it up, took it back to Israel. They went to one of the professors at Hebrew University and says, look what we found on a rock in wherever it was in Africa. The professor opens it up and he says, that's a shin. It's the letter, first letter of Shema Israel. He said, this is amazing. Where'd you find it? And they told him. And they went and they talked to the people. The people claimed they were descendants of the original, the people who lived in Jerusalem. Well, okay, you can claim anything, right? But they did DNA testing and they found out that they had the genetic markers of Kohanim, of priests. They're the only a Cohen can know who he is on this whole earth. Nobody else can know. I mean, I can tell who my mother and father is, and you guys can too. But a Cohen is the only one that can know what tribe he's from the original Israel. There's no special markings for Levite or for Benjamin or for Gad or for any of those tribes. So God has set up certain markers, but the rest of humanity is all just the rest of humanity. Just like all cats, whether they're lions, tigers, pumas, or a house cat, they're the same. They're born, live, and die. They have the same type of soul, they act the same about stuff. Well, human beings are the same way. So in answer to your question, I'm going to say from what I know and what I've learned from the sages and stuff I've read and from Kabbalah, that yes, the answer is yes, we're all the same. Go ahead, Terry.
A few years ago, this is an interesting thing. There was a man who was studying Hebrew, non-Jewish man. He was a heart doctor. And he got back from one of his classes, and I'm paraphrasing because it's been several years ago since I've read the article. But I think he got back from one of his Hebrew classes, where he's learning Hebrew, and he had a dissection of a heart on that light board that the doctors have, of a patient that he was working with. And he turned and he looked and he noticed something. And you can Google this. You can Google dissection of the heart on Google and look at it. And the heart, when it was dissected, had the shape of a sheen, and the blood flowed through the heart in the shape of a sheen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought that was really cool because that's almost like, Hashem, he's like, the Cohen, but he's put his mark on humanity.
Yeah. Well, there's a Russian guy that claims, he's made videos about it, how DNA, you can find Yud K Vav K in DNA, the actual
Yeah,
letters.
I've heard of that too, yeah.
But I've heard from some researchers and doctors, he says the guy saw what he wanted to see, but I don't know. I'll let them argue about that.
Troy had his hand up a while ago.
Did you want to say something, Troy?
Yeah. So from Christianity, where I came from, it was talking about like, you know, when you marry kids and all that stuff. Like I don't know anything concerning like you know, marriage, wives, or wife or whatever, children and stuff. Like, does any of that matter on the other side? Does, you know, I lost me and my second wife had a miscarriage, so, you know, will I meet that soul? Will I not? I don't. It's kind of one of those questions I never I don't really want to know an answer for in a way, but then again, I'm kind of curious as to, you know, will, like, you know, my spouse and stuff. Well, I don't know. I'm not married now. I was, but like, does any of that matter in the world to come? I guess. So.
Let me put it to you this way. None of us know. We don't even get hints of that on out of the Torah, other than we understand that we're gonna be able to recognize people on the other side, whether they're relatives or friends or people we had interaction with. There's gonna be so many people there. If you bump into them, it'll be a big miracle. But maybe you're supposed to. I don't know. But the actual how it goes on the other side is we don't know. We haven't got there yet, so we just don't know. But there was a young couple that got married in a village in Russia, and they got married, and the guy was pretty successful in his business, and the wife had 3 or 4 or 5 kids, and they were really doing good in business. And you know, and God, we're going back into the 14, 15, 1600s right now. And they had a child that was born that they recognized as some kind of special child. There was something special about the child, and they were really deeply in love with this child. And when the kid was about 5 years old, disappeared one day. It just tore the family up. It tore the village up. They finally found the body of the child. And it turns out that some traveler coming through town had kidnapped the child and had done some terrible things to the kid. And the mother just went into her life changed. She was just totally depressed and upset, and she was never happy anymore. And this was a family that the town respected because they were a nice family and happy and brought joy. And she just went down, down, down in depression and stuff. And it took her, I don't know, 5 or 6 years to come around, to come back out. And just as she did, her husband died of an illness. And it just broke her totally. First, a child, he's a 5-year-old kid that was brutally abused and murdered by some stranger. And then there was the father who died of an illness 4 or 5 years later. And she just disconnected from everything. She, you know, barely ate, didn't take care of her body properly, just totally went down. And she would cry and cry and cry out, what's going on here? Why did this happen? You took my beautiful little son, and then you take my husband. And one night she went to sleep and she had a dream. her husband appeared to her in a dream. He says, okay.
Whoop, I think Pesach froze. He'll be back in a minute. I think the internet in Israel sometimes will do that.
I wanted to hear the rest of the story.
I know it does that, doesn't it?
Couldn't have
Well,
stopped in a couple of seconds or anything. It had to stop
yeah,
like
he might have to. He might have to go back out and come back in. But then
oh, he
there he is.
There he is.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, you were at. You were telling about the dream. We didn't get to hear about the.
Okay. The husband said to the wife, "It's time for you to get out of all of this stuff. You got to go back to life again. You got to get back to life. You have other kids. You need to get married again. You're young enough. You got to get back to life." And she's, "You're actually dead. Where are you? Have you seen our son? Have you seen our son?" And I can't understand why you get taken away so early. She says, "Yeah, I've seen him." She says, "Can you call him over in the dream?" She said, "I want to see him. I want to see him." She said, "No, I can't do that." She said, "Why?" She says, "Because he's on a much higher level than I am. He's a higher level in life than I am." She's a 5-year-old kid. "I want to see him. I want to talk to him." Look, it took me a long time to convince the people on this side to let me go up and talk to him. And I got to go up and talk to him for like 3 or 4 minutes. And I walked in, they said, "He's in that room, but be quiet when you go in." I walk in and I see a teacher there teaching this huge room full of people. And the guy called me back out and came back down to my level, because when we go there, we can have levels of teaching. And he says, "That's my son, that old guy I saw up there teaching his class." And so the guy that had taken him up there, and I forget who it was that took him up there in this dream, said to him, and then he says to his wife, "Here's what they told me." He says that our son was a very righteous man, a very righteous teacher. He taught thousands of people here on earth. But he had to do a soul correction for one thing. And the wife says, "What was that?" He said, "When he was an infant, his mother died, and his father hired a non-Jewish woman to breastfeed him until he was weaned." And his wife says, "What does that have to do with anything?" He says, "Well, this person is a very righteous person, but he had to go through a period where he was breastfed by a Jewish mother to complete his tikkun, his fixing. So he was sent down to earth to go through that and to do one other thing." Right? And the wife says, "What's that?" He said, "Well, that town was supposed to go through a pogrom. That's where they come in and they just kill everybody in town, and they devastate the women and they kill the kids and everything." It was in Russia. And when that soul found out about that, that soul volunteered to be murdered and abused to save the town. That was the reason the soul was there, for 2 things: to be breastfed by a Jewish mother and to take the punishment that was going to go on the whole town. The wife woke up in the morning. She took care of herself, got cleaned up, went outside in the sun. She greeted people. She was joyous again because she understood the whole reason now what happened with this young soul that came and left so quickly, and that it was actually a recycled soul that needed to do a fixing, but the person knew what the fixing was because he was so righteous. And he accomplished it. And then he took the punishment that was due on the village for some reason. God said, okay, well, you can be punished instead of the village, so I won't, the people aren't going to come and destroy the village. They'll just destroy you. And the righteous person said, okay. Once it was done, he went back to where he was before. So everything that happens and everything we do is planned. It's not planned. It's divine providence. And people say, well, how can it be if God knows what I'm going to do? How can it be divine providence? He already knows. But it's not like we know. It's not like a prophecy, or it's not like, okay, I'm going to make things happen so in advance so you don't have any free choice. This is what's going to happen. God sees everything from the beginning to the end. So already knows what your life choices are going to be the minute you come out of your mother's womb. Even before, probably. But he knows what your life choice is going to be, and he knows what's going to go on. And he just watches it happen. But he has foreknowledge, but he hasn't foreplanned. What we do with our life is ours. We can always make a different choice anywhere along the road. So everybody's soul, I believe, from everything I've learned, goes through the same type of thing. Whether there is this thing called Gehinnom for people who aren't Jewish, that I don't know. I just know there's no hell the way it's described by the Christians and the Muslims and a lot of the other people. Because I could never, forget knowing, I could never believe in a God that would do that to somebody. You love me, but you're going to do this to me? Oh, it's for your own good. What, for eternity? You know, come on. To me, it's just, it doesn't make sense. That the person that created us because he has a need for us would put somebody into eternal torment. When he created us, he's responsible. And he wants us to be good, kind people to everybody. Why aren't we all nasty? If that's what we're going to end up with, there isn't it. But you know the answers to that question. And Chrissy, and answer your question, I think you can pretty confidently tell people, but you can't explain it to them, and that's the hard part. The knowledge you come to for this is a building of knowledge over many different types of teachings that you get and come together. And you just all of a sudden one day realize, whoa, I got all this information I put together this way. It shows me it's this way, but how do I explain it to somebody?
Thank you. As I said, inside I felt it, but I wasn't confident enough to assure this relative that was. So yes, that's great. You've cleared that up. I'm real happy with that now.
Yeah, okay.
There's one source that I read several years ago when I was doing my studies. In the book of Job, and one of the books that I had that dealt with this subject on a Jewish level. In the book of Job, chapter 33, there's a hint to it. It says that, I can't remember the exact verses, I think it's toward the end of chapter 33. It says something that he raises man from the pit to the light of life to deal with him 2 or 3 times. I'm just paraphrasing it. But in this particular book that I was reading in my studies, that was the only verse that they said that they believed had a hint to that subject. It's in the Hebrew Scriptures.
Yeah, and if we look at things that happened over the history of the time of the 40 years in the desert and things like that, we get a hint of it there also. That, Nadav Avihu who brought foreign fire in front of God, and God destroyed them, Aaron's two sons. There's a couple different ways to look at it, but they had a tikkun to do. And somehow the tikkun was done when Pinchas was born. He had parts of the souls of those two guys in him. And when he carried out this strict instruction, when he put the spear through Cosby and Zimri, which was a command of God in the Torah about how you treat people that do what they did, nobody else would do it. Moses didn't do it. He was going to go check with God to see what to do. And Pinchas just picked it up and did it. He carried out the thing by the letter of Gvorah, the harsh punishment. And it says that Nadav and Avihu made their tikkun, their fixing of their souls, through him for what they did back then of bringing strange fire to God. Now, how does this work? What happened when they were fried, crispy critters, whatever you want to call it, and when fire came down and consumed them? When we make a connection with God, there's a running to God and a coming back from that. There are times when in your prayers, you feel yourself like reaching out and almost touching God. You can feel it down deep inside. You feel the connection. But you also have to come back down from there, back to earth. Nadav and Avihu were so excited about being the first in the line of the first high priest ever. Their father was the first high priest, and then they were so excited about their service and what they were chosen for that they just wanted to get even closer and closer to God, and they put themselves on such a high level they totally forgot about ever coming back down here. So God then destroyed their bodies. But then what he did was wrong. See, when God sends fire down to destroy something, only that thing is destroyed. Somebody could have been standing right next to them, or somebody could have had their hand on one of their heads. Even as their hand wouldn't have been injured. The fire was just for them. When the sacrifices go on the altar to be burned, there's a fire under the altar, yes, but that's not what burns the sacrifice. God sends down the fire to consume the sacrifices that are totally consumed. And a priest can have his hand on the sacrifice, and he's not going to be hurt. It only consumes what God wants it to consume. That's why the temple in Jerusalem is so important. That fire is a part. That's why Jerusalem is called the city of fire. It's one of the four holy cities, the city of fire, because of that fire that the altar pulls down from heaven to consume the sacrifices on top of it. Can you imagine what it was like being in Jerusalem during those times? Wow. When the temple was there. A 3-year-old kid in Jerusalem knew more about God than we'll ever know. Because, we will eventually, but in this lifetime, it would be nice if Mashiach came and we learned it right now. But he had a deeper understanding than we have right now. We're like little babies compared to a 4-year-old kid in Jerusalem. Every day, that fire came down twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, depending on the day. If it was a holiday or whatever, Shabbat. The closeness of God. But we're all connected together. Each one of us in this room is connected to each other because we're all part of God. And each human being on this earth is connected to one another because we're all part of God. God is the true existence. We're just a part of it. And we're all connected. So when we treat somebody poorly, it's somebody we're connected to, we're treating poorly. We may think not, what do I know from this guy from wherever? But we're all connected together. And God wants us to understand that. But we have to come to the understanding ourselves. When you get a heart to help somebody through a hard time or addiction or whatever it is in their life, it's simply you're connecting with another part of yourself, another part of God. When you're leading people, trying to explain to them, trying to show them what the truth is, you're just, think of it as teaching yourself another part of what truth is when you're teaching somebody else or when you're talking about it. Don't ever debate about it. If somebody says, this is what I believe, tell them you have the right to believe that. Don't try to prove them wrong in what they believe. That shuts down their minds from learning something new or something opening up inside of them. And it happens to each one of us the same way. Did I lose everybody again?
No,
Oh, okay. Looked like the
he's
picture.
listening.
It looked like the picture froze. We're all connected. We're all one. And it really, I mean, we look at different, somebody's got blonde hair and somebody has blue eyes and somebody brown hair and somebody black hair and this and that, the other thing. We're still part of one. And that's God. There is no such thing. Well, it exists because man created it, but the religion, there's no religion, there's only reality from God's standpoint. Being Jewish and being a Noahide is not a religion at all. It's the freeing from the religion. All these things we got to do, they're what God needs us to do, complete creation. And he's going to take care of us because we do that. Okay, that was a good question, Chrissy. Thank you. It made me think too. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. One of the things I just want to say right now, because I know that people are thinking of things in their minds and they do have questions. I want to say something that there's never been created a dumb question or a silly question. The only thing dumb is not to ask something because then you don't get the information. So I learned this when I was in classes learning stuff. And man, I'm going to ask the teacher XYZ. It's a silly question. Nah, then people are going to laugh at me if I say it or think I'm silly. And then somebody else raised their hand and said, hey, what about XYZ? So we shouldn't be judging ourselves harshly. We just get the information. And our lives end up.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
I think it'll be a quick one. The answer, I mean. You had mentioned earlier, at least it seemed like a differentiation between idolaters and pagans. What makes that different? Or what makes them different from each other?
Okay, idolaters, basically, when idolatry first started on earth, which is somewhere around the birth of Seth and Enosh, everybody knew about one God. They knew he was there. There was no doubt about it. But they started looking at the luminaries and the lights in the sky and saying, well, I know God's way up there, but these lights are closer. And he gave them all this glory, and he gave them all this stuff to help us. So if they can help us with warmth and they can help us with light, maybe they can give us the other things we need. So we don't have to go try to reach up so high. We can just do it here. They were intermediaries. And then it came to the point where they started making figurines, saying, okay, this is the god of this, and this is the god of that. It was easier to go to them than try to reach all the way up to God. That is not paganism, that's idolatry. Paganism was, okay, we're going to put our children through fire. We're going to do all these kind of stupid things on the altar of this god that we call God. They used to do all kinds of vile and terrible things in the name of their gods. I mean, I don't even want to go into some of this stuff. It's just so vulgar.
They just do a research on, was it the god of Moab, Baal Peor? There's information out there that I won't tell you what they did to worship that god, but like Pesach said, it's disgusting.
Yeah, that's paganism.
So that's paganism. So paganism is not the worship of a god, but what you do in the service of that god.
I guess you can put it that way, except that the people that did that didn't use the idols for intermediaries. They believed that their idols, that those things they did, they were God. Most idolaters thought, okay, God's way up here. He created the earth. It's hands off, but we got these other stars that he created, these other things he created. So we're going to go through the stars, through the planets, through the.
I understood. I understand what you're saying there now, because Avodah Zarah, strange service.
Yes.
If you're serving God, the right God, but strangely.
Right.
Paganism isn't even serving the right God, even strangely. It takes it to another level.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
To me, the key words is Avodah Zarah and understanding what it is. What
Strange words. Yeah. You got it.
That's good to know. I mean, Veronica, thanks for asking me a question, because I had never thought about that question, because I considered them both the same, but now I understand they're not.
Yeah.
I did too. Thank you.
Yeah. The idolatry is essentially what religions are based on, that go through an intermediary. Anybody have any other questions? I really enjoyed tonight's class. We went through in the last few weeks where and what about the 7 laws. What I want to start doing with the class is, first of all, I'd like questions, but I'm going to try to see if I can't prepare a little thing on the weekly Torah portion. Unless you can, everything that I teach and I lay in front of people, unless there's something you can take and use, the teaching's unsuccessful. That you got to apply, you got to think about what you learn and apply it to your life, and see if you can use it, the information you got. Because that's what the teaching about Hashem is all about. And any teaching you get, there should be a takeaway. If there's one little tiny point, there should be a takeaway from it. If you don't get a takeaway, then either the teacher's done a bad job of explaining, basically. So I want to go through some things and show people. Anyway, they're not long teachings. I mean, we can talk about the Torah portion every week. It's not anyway. And I want to try to show people, you've learned this, here's what you can take away with you and apply it to your life today to make your your relationship with your Creator, one-on-one relationship, stronger. Of course, a lot of people will hear something and say, wow, okay, I'm going to use that. And it just becomes part of your relationship with God, because what we have with God is a relationship. Each one of us has our own relationship with Him. And we're learning how to do it through Torah, because that's what it's all there for, because He needs that relationship with us. He needs you.
So maybe a good idea would be to take a point or two from each of the, take a point or two from the weekly Torah portion that would apply to the non-Jews and what they can get out of that.
Yeah, human beings. Some of it, some of the stuff applies to Jews only, but most of it applies to everybody. When it comes down to like the Leviticus, that's okay, Jews, this is for you. I mean, just all these rules and regulations and stuff like that. So that you guys aren't necessarily don't have to get involved with that, but learn about it. Yes, it's always good to learn. Why do we have an oral tradition, an oral Torah, an oral explanation? Why is it told fathers tell your sons and your sons tell your sons? So things continue. If you just hand them a book and say, here, go read it, what happens to the book? When you're dusting under the coffee table, you usually find it there probably. People they don't learn it, they don't remember. God tells us we're supposed to remember. The biggest teaching point on remembering is Passover. Pesach. We have to sit at the table and tell the story like it happened to. I have to tell it every Passover like it happened to me. Not that it's ancient history. It happened to me. Then my kids can have a hand-on-hand relationship with leaving Egypt. This is how God wants us to do things with everything. Okay. It's getting close to the time where I got to go get dressed and head off for morning prayer. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you guys. I appreciate it that you come and listen. And I certainly hope we can build the audience, get more people involved in this, because more people, I think, it's one person learns it, tells it to another, and it goes to another, and it's just anyway. Thank you so much, and don't forget, women, to share your. Oh, there's a chat. What happened? Okay. Oh, you're quite welcome, Scotty. I appreciate you being here with us. All you guys, appreciate you coming here. And you women, don't forget to get involved with Shira. And I think it's an important thing what's going on there.
In Pesach in Australia, our Indigenous families call it secret women's business.
There you go.
So we'll have some serious secret women's business, I'm sure. I've got to go now. Bye, everyone.
Bless you guys. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.